Hey everybody, and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2022. Hopefully it's a fantastic year for all of us. But this one we're talking core plays for week 17 of the NFL season over on DraftKings. Talking my three favorite cash and tournament plays on the entire slate with their ownership projections, and some of the props over on Price Picks as well. And if you want the full list of ownership projections, the data sheets, my optimizer, and all that fun stuff, you're going to find it. Link can be found down below. And since the beginning of the month, is the best time to sign up. We have NASCAR starting back up next month in February. Baseball starting in the coming months. We have NBA every night. And obviously the NFL throughout the playoffs. So if you want to check it out, lots of extra content over there. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified. Just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you sign over on Prize Picks, you can get a free money bonus. It's positive match up to $100, so it's free money. Want to use it to your advantage? When you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. And I cannot wait to get back to Florida because you cannot play Prize Picks in Ohio, which is very unfortunate. So heading back to Florida, I am very excited to start playing again, as I do highly recommend playing it in addition to whatever you do on DraftKings every single weekend. But I think that'll be pretty much it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And starting us off with cash game core play number 1, we have David Montgomery, RB1 of the Chicago Bears. Only $6,500. Price to come up a little bit from last week, but this is still a fantastic spot. And projection-wise, it is great as one of the best pump dollar options on the slate. Keep in mind, these numbers are not set in stone. I do adjust them up until kickoff on Sundays, but I have him close to 19 fantasy points right now, close to 25% projected ownership, and his prop over on Price Picks is kind of low at 67.5 yards. But his involvement in the passing game, which is what's really been giving him such a high floor recently, he has 32 targets over the past 4 weeks, in addition to getting typically 15 plus carries on the ground. So I love the usage. We should get 20 plus touches out of him. This is a fantastic spot. The Bears find themselves as 6-point home favorites. They're facing the Giants, who are terrible versus the run so far this season. Currently 27th DVA versus the run and 25th versus fantasy running backs. And the way this slate sets up, he just fits perfectly into lineups. And from playing cash games, I'm definitely going to find a way to get him in. There's other good pivots in this price range that we will talk about, but I'm loving Dave Montgomery in cash this week. And moving on to cash game core play number 2, we have Antonio Brown of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at only $6,100, and more than likely no Mike Evans once again, as he just got off the COVID list, but he's also dealing with a hamstring injury, and we know for sure Chris Godwin's going to be out, no Leonard Fournette. So it's basically the Antonio Brown, Ronald Jones, and Rob Gronkowski show for the Buccaneers. Although we now have a big question mark with AB because he did get injured in practice, tweaked his ankle, and he missed practice on Friday. Now, I'm recording this on Saturday morning, so maybe we'll get some news hopefully later today, but it sounds like he could end up being a game-time decision, which absolutely sucks. But if he's good to go in this game, I currently have projected to be the highest owned wide receiver, actually the highest owned player on the entire slate. I have projected for nearly 21 fantasy points, which is like wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 in the slate, and he's only at $6,100. He's only behind like Stephon Diggs for me and Cooper Kupp, obviously, but he's definitely not priced nearly as much as those guys. And his prop over on Price Picks is only 80.5 yards, which I think is way too low. Last week in a tougher matchup versus Carolina Panthers with no Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, had 101 yards, 15 targets, 10 catches. And this is a much softer matchup here versus the New York Jets, who are currently dead last, 32nd DVA versus the pass this season. And the Buccaneers have a team total close to 30. So if he's good to go, he should have little to no resistance from this defense, and I would be very shocked if he doesn't get 100 plus and a touchdown. But as of right now, it's kind of a waiting game to see if he plays or not. If he happens to be out, guys like Rashad Perriman, Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller obviously get bumps, and so would Rob Gronkowski, and just Ronald Jones, because they probably wouldn't throw the ball as much as you would expect them to without Antonio Brown, just because the wide receiver group would be really, really thinned out. But I'm really hoping he plays, because this is a smash spot for him. The optimizer loves him, and he just makes a lot of sense in my opinion. So I'll have to wait and see if he's good to go, but if he is, no reason not to like AB this week. And moving on to cash game, core play number 3, we have Sony Michel of the Los Angeles Rams, $5,800, and he's basically going to be the only running back this week, unless you think Jake Funk is going to steal carries from Sony Michel. I don't really see that happening. Cam Akers is currently questionable, although earlier in the week, McVay did say that he is unlikely to make his season debut. So even if Cam Akers happen to play, coming off the Achilles injury, there's no way he gets significant usage. So it's going to be the Sony Michel show versus the Baltimore Ravens, and I will say they are much worse versus the pass than they are versus the run. But we're talking about the starting running back on a Sean McVay offense with a 26-point implied team total. They're 5.5-point favorites, had 27 carries and 4 targets last week, which equates to over 30 total opportunities. I will take that all day in the situation. I don't really care who the running back is, but Sony Michel hasn't looked too bad this year, so I'm definitely a big fan of him on the slate. I have projected for close to 18 fantasy points, which at his price point looks very, very good. One of the highest running backs in the entire slate. Currently have him top 3 with Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery, who we already talked about, and obviously Sony Michel here. They're all pretty close, and I feel like that's going to be the main 3 guys people go to in cash games at the running back position this week. And his prop over on Prize Picks is pretty low at 65.5 rushing yards. I do like that touchdown prop. I have a hard time seeing Sony Michel not score in this game, but 65.5 yards, even though it's a tougher matchup versus Baltimore on the ground, I still think that feels a little bit low for a guy that's going to get a ton of work. And moving on to some of the tournament plays here, we'll start with our first guy, Jalen Waddle at $6,700, and it's mainly just because he's priced around a lot of guys that I think will be higher owned than him. Like you have T. Higgins right above him. A.J. Brown is going to be very chalky at $7,200. You have CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen right below him, a couple hundred more dollars. You have Antonio Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Cooks, so I'm currently projecting to be higher owned. Not a lot of people want to play a Dolphin with a team total of 17 on this slate because it's a pretty large slate, and Waddle is kind of expensive at nearly $7,000. But the way he's been utilized on this offense, he's getting pepper with targets, double-digit targets the past month or so now, and he's facing Tennessee, who is bleeding points to wide receivers, allowing the second most points per game to the wide receiver position. And Waddle's a guy that's just going to get a lot of targets, and I'm assuming they're probably going to be trailing in this game. I don't think it's going to be like a blowout or anything, but they should be trailing. They're 4-point dogs. And I currently have projected for around 8% ownership, which I just feel is like a little bit too low for a guy that has 20, 30-point upside in this matchup. Currently having projected for around 16.5 fantasy points. And over on Prize Picks, his props seem a little bit low. 66.5 receiving yards, but I like that 6 reception prop over there. I think he could definitely get over on that. But I'm definitely a big fan of Waddle. The talent is there, and he's been looking really good recently. And I know the price is up there, but I think it's what makes him a pretty good tournament play this week. And moving on to our second GPP core play of the week. It's a bit of a risky one because this is his first game back from the AC joint sprain, but at least it wasn't a leg injury. But it's DeAndre Swift, RB1 for the Detroit Lions at $6,000. And the coach did say, you can't always trust coaches. I think we all know that. But the coach did say they aren't planning on using him in a limited role. It should be fully good to go DeAndre Swift. Not that we should really expect like a game versus Pittsburgh where he had those 33 carries, but we should get like 15, 20 touches out of DeAndre Swift, hopefully. And I'm hoping a majority of that comes through the passing game. Yes, Tim Boyle looking like he's going to be the quarterback this week for the Detroit Lions, but DeAndre Swift did have a good game with Tim Boyle once. He did have the long touchdown against the Browns, which kind of helped boost that, but still, he has shown that he can have upside with Tim Boyle at quarterback. Currently, I'm projected for around 15.2 on fantasy points. This was earlier in the season, and not coming out of an injury, I'd probably have him projected a little bit higher than that, maybe 17 to 18 points, but I am kind of limiting that a little bit just in case we don't see a full allotment of touches for DeAndre Swift. And I currently am projected for under 10% ownership, but I love this matchup versus Seattle because even though they're 9th DVA versus the run this season, they're still allowing the second most points per game to the running back position, and most of that damage is coming through the air, which DeAndre Swift obviously excels at. He has a near 20% target share this season, over 6 targets per game and 5 receptions. And the Seahawks, while they're allowing under 100 rushing yards per game this season, they're allowing nearly 70 receiving yards and over 7 catches per game to running backs. This is like a perfect spot for DeAndre Swift, the pass catching running back. So this is why I love this spot in tournaments and cash games. I wouldn't go there just because coming off the injury, but this price is way too low if he's going to get me 15 plus touches on this slate. And moving on to the last slide here, it's not really a core play or anything. I'm just saying what I'm going to be doing on this slate, and that's the majority of my lineups will have either one of Jonathan Taylor or Cooper Kupp. So just to talk about this, I feel like Jonathan Taylor is a better way to go in cash games and Cooper Kupp, maybe more so in tournaments. It's kind of playing around with roster construction. I know I kind of said different in my lineup building video, but we did have some more value open up, like Steven Anderson on the Chargers, only $2,500. He's kind of a free square at tight end this week now, which really allowed me to spend up for Jonathan Taylor and kind of go more so mid-range at wide receiver. So Taylor, we'll start with him first. I'm projected for just over 27 fantasy points, which is fantastic. By far the RB1 in this slate. Close to 26% projected ownership. Over on Prize Picks, over 100 rushing yard prop, which I would not be surprised if he hits that. He's averaging 108 on the season, over 5.5 yards per carry, 20 attempts per game, well over a rushing touchdown. He's involved in the passing game a little bit, 10% target share, just under 3 targets per game. And while the Raiders have been decent versus the run this year, 10th DVOA, but they're allowing the 3rd most points per game to running back position. And they're going to be missing some guys this week defensively, which will hurt the run game a little bit. So Taylor, as a 7-point favorite playing at home, yes, he is expensive, but I think he's definitely worth the money. And if you don't go Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp's the other obvious option, because playing with roster construction, you can easily fit one of these guys in. Because we're playing Trey Lance at quarterback this week more than likely, and he's less than $5,000. So we have the money to spend up for one of these studs, because everybody else in the slate, kind of cheap for the most part. But Cooper Kupp, having projected for just under 29 fantasy points, around 24% projected ownership. Might be a little bit high on that. I feel like it's going to come down by the time Sunday rolls around. But over on Prize Picks, 104.5 receiving yards and 25 fantasy points for his prop. I like both, but Kupp finds himself in about the best matchup you could ask for, as the Baltimore Ravens have been getting killed versus the past this season, especially recently. And obviously, Kupp's been the best wide receiver in fantasy this year, and the Ravens are 30th DVA versus the pass and 28th versus fantasy wide receivers. And there's just really no stopping Cooper Kupp. I mean, each and every single week, he's just so consistent. 115 receiving yards, nearly 9 catches per game, nearly 12 targets per game, close to a touchdown, 33% target share. Just no reason at all not to like Cooper Kupp besides his price point. But like I said, you can easily fit one of these two in, and that's my strategy on this slate. Just play at least one of these guys. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Now is the best time to do so since we're at the beginning of the month, but projections, optimizers, ownership projections for all the players, not just the few I preview here on the YouTube. So if you want to check it out, you know where to find it. That's for the NFL, but the NBA, NASCAR, and the MLB as well. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks, just you versus the projections. And as of right now, if you sign over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think that'll be it. I will stop rambling. I wish you guys the best of luck this weekend. Hope you had a fantastic holiday week.